Continuing now on Newsmax Prime with a look back at this day in history. On this date, November 17th, 1973, Richard Nixon offers one of the famous utterances in presidential history. Speaking to a group of newspaper editors gathered at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Mr. Nixon says, quote, "I am not a crook." Watergate would eventually take its toll on the Nixon presidency, and on August 9th, 1974, Richard Nixon resigned. Gerald Ford was then sworn in as our 38th president and eventually issued an unconditional pardon to his predecessor. The Ford presidency and the Nixon pardon, the subjects of tonight's American Moment.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
It was a stirring moment. Never before had a president resigned and another man risen to the nation's highest office. On August 9th, 1974, Gerald R. Ford was sworn in as the country's 38th president. It was a time in the nation rocked by scandal. The same day, August 9th, 1974, the House Judiciary Committee passed articles of impeachment against then-President Richard M. Nixon. That same day, Richard Nixon resigned, and Vice President Ford was hastily sworn in as Commander-in-Chief by Chief Justice Warren Burger. Soon after taking office, Gerald Ford ended the Watergate prosecution by granting Richard Nixon a full and unconditional pardon to the fallen president with this decree.
My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over.
On October 17th, 1974, President Ford agreed to appear before Congress to defend his historic decision.
I was absolutely convinced then, as I am now, that if we had had this series, an indictment, a trial, a conviction, and anything else that transpired after that, that the attention of the President, the Congress, and the American people would have been diverted from the problems that we have to solve.
Historians have lauded President Ford's political courage in granting the pardon, but the move was widely believed to have cost him the presidency in 1976, when he was defeated by former Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. For Newsmax TV, I'm Bill Curtis, and this is an American Moment.
From history to the here and now, President Obama is on his final official foreign trip, traveling around Europe. The line is he is there to put to rest some of the fears of our European allies who are concerned about President-elect Donald Trump and a Trump administration. Yet there are those who believe European leaders don't need comforting. Instead, they need to toughen up. Andras Simonyi is the former Hungarian ambassador to the United States. He writes in the Huffington Post, European leaders should stop whining and accept Trump's victory. Andres currently serves as the managing director at the Center for Transatlantic Relations at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. And Andras Simonyi joins us now from Newsmax Washington. So Andres, you're a guy who's usually diplomatic, but in that piece, at least in the headline, you're saying to European leaders, quit whining. What should they be doing?
Well, that's exactly the point. What I'm trying to tell the Europeans is, first of all, get over it. Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. More importantly, he's the next leader of the free world. And whether you like it or not, the United States is still the leader of the Western family. And, you know, get over it and try to understand how you will cooperate with the next president.
Ambassador, obviously in this country, we saw all these polls that turned out to be wrong. Were our European cousins looking at the same polls, or was there just a state of mind on the continent that Hillary was going to win no matter what?
Well, let me be a little bit brutally honest about myself. I've always said Donald Trump could win this elections. You know, I traveled a lot outside of Washington, and I said, look, it's a possibility. I suggested to Europeans to have a plan B ready. They didn't. I guess they read the same polls, and you know, sometimes people don't want to face reality, and that's exactly what happened in Europe.
And so it was for European leaders, as and I don't mean to group those leaders in with the left in this country. We'll say observers in this country, it was a surprise to see Mr. Trump with his historic win. So now you have President Obama. Today on his itinerary, he was in Germany meeting with Chancellor Angela Merkel, and during a press conference, the incumbent president had a couple of comments concerning the president-elect.
My hope is that the president-elect coming in takes a similarly constructive approach, finding areas where we can cooperate with Russia. I don't expect that the president-elect will follow exactly our blueprint or our approach, but my hope is that he does not simply take a realpolitik approach.
Now, Andres, I know that you are loath to comment on American politics. You were commenting to the Europeans about the results of what goes on there. President Obama, though, and I spoke of it earlier in the program, there were some things for domestic political consumption that I found objectionable. Here with this particular statement, he sounded fairly diplomatic. However, he offered a reservation about the president-elect. Does that kind of candor in any leader? I mean, if let's turn the tables. Let's say Angela Merkel was in the United States. Would she comment on German domestic politics while overseas? Is that a good habit for any leader to fall into, commenting on political matters at home while they're abroad?
You know, there's something about this that I see differently. I was very much encouraged by the conversation President-elect Trump and President Obama had, which suggests to me they had some serious conversations also about upcoming visits of the president overseas. Deep inside, I kind of think that they must have talked about this and that some of this is engineered. I would, you know, knowing the way presidents talk to former presidents, presidents talk to former candidates for the presidency, that's a very special club. And I would not think that any president would want to seriously undermine the next president. That's my take on it. I hope I'm right, and it was maybe more meant to calm the fears of Europeans. By the way, I have to say personally, Donald Trump is a no-nonsense guy. I know, I've met him, and he will be very, very, very serious on the Russians. Personally, I think the Russians might be up for some surprise.
Well, a strong leader in the United States, and I'm saying this both with my background in American politics as a member of Congress and as an observer, I believe there will be a very different style from Mr. Trump that perhaps Mr. Putin may not be counting on. Andras Simonyi, tonight from Newsmax Washington, we can always count on your incisive analysis, and we thank you very much, sir. Now, tomorrow on America Talks Live at 1 o'clock Eastern, we'll have political advisor Sam Nunberg, foreign policy columnist Tom Rogan, and executive editor of The Stream, Dr. Jay Richards, plus your calls. You get to be a part of the program each weekday at 1 o'clock Eastern here on America Talks Live. Then, tomorrow night, in this time period, beginning at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific time, we will have a political panel that will include West Coast talk show host and Republican consultant Andrea Kaye, my former classmate in the Congress of the United States. We were both elected in that historic year of 1994, Michael Patrick Flanagan, and again we will visit with Dr. Jay Richards. Hope to visit with you twice tomorrow. Till then, stay brave, stay free, stay tuned, and thanks for watching.